The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Oh, hello, everyone. I'm waiting for those screens to turn on, make sure everyone's ready. Welcome to Schoology Exchange Live. I'm Adam Larson, and I have the privilege of being your host for today's webinar. Also joining us is Dr. Lesley Clifton. We'll get a chance to hear from her today, but while we're waiting for the others to join, I'm going to launch a poll. The purpose of the poll is to let us know a little bit about you and start our conversation. Poll for today is, how experienced is your institution with online learning programs? Then there's a couple of options. I'll come back on in 2 minutes, and hopefully that will give enough time for those still joining. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so we've got some of the reports coming in. Again, people are still joining us. Can we go ahead and Scott Smith, I guess we're going to give 1 more minute. I guess a couple more people are joining on. I'll be right back on. Okay, great. So we got a couple of results in. So far, it looks like the majority of people have had actually more than 3 years of experience with online learning programs. A couple of you are kind of into your 1 to 3 year range, trying it out, and then we have some that are evaluating options. Wonderful. Hopefully, this our talk today with Dr. Lesley Clifton is really going to help you as you're moving forward with your plans, and can offer you some thoughts and opinions on things. So if I go ahead and go to my next slide, so we can move forward. For those of you just joining, welcome to Schoology Exchange. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Adam Larson, and I'm the Director of Educational Strategy here at Schoology. And joining me is Dr. Lesley Clifton. We'll get a chance to hear from her in a moment, but I wanted to give you some context about this particular webinar. Our purpose in providing exchanges is for sharing stories, having conversations, and making connections. Schoology has always desired to make a difference in education, besides just providing our award-winning learning management system. Sorry for that shameful plug there. We're wanting to highlight some of the great things that are happening in education and provide a place for the foundational ideas behind them to spread. We've recognized our presenter as someone who has a great story to share, and we've connected with you because of the benefit that it could provide. Hopefully we can have some great conversation today that will encourage and or inform you. Then towards the end, we also hope to make a connection with you to talk more specifically about your needs and what we can do to help. With that said, today's exchange is going to focus on online learning programs. We've seen this conversation growing among educational leaders and are thankful that Dr. Clifton has joined us today to share her experience. Now, as far as the flow of the webinar or the basic formula of how we like to conduct these opportunities, we'll start with Dr. Clifton. We'll hear more about who she is and what she's about. Next, we'll look at how Schoology is making an impact in her educational world and possibly share some user stories. Then with those two added up, we'll be able to discuss some takeaways that she's learned and is willing to share with us. During that time, we'll open up the webinar for a question from you, the audience. In fact, if you have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat window so you don't forget them and can ask them towards the end. Okay, with that said, Dr. Lesley Clifton, are you on with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. Well, thank you again so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to be in this webinar and letting us ask you some questions. And one of the things that we'd like to start off first is actually questions about your role. Can you go ahead and tell us what your title is in your organization?
Yes, so I am the Director of Online Learning for the Classical Academies, and the Classical Academies are an organization of K-12 charter schools in San Diego County in California. We have 3 charters with 3 schools, but we have 7 locations. So I oversee online learning programs, online learning research, pedagogy, curriculum development for online learning for all of our 4,200 students in our 7 locations. But priority is overseeing our online learning programs, which we have 3rd through 12th grade, and a majority of my time is spent with our 7th through 12th graders. In addition to that, I oversee testing and assessment and accountability and a few other things. Being a charter school, we wear many, many hats.
Wow, that is impressive. Now, is that just you by yourself doing all this, changing the world by yourself, or you have a team that works with you, or?
I have a phenomenal team. Each of our locations has a site leader or a principal. For our online learning programs, I directly oversee 2 principals, but there are 4 principals that are running online learning programs that I indirectly oversee. Our 7th through 12th grade online programs, we run what are called cyber cafes. These are about 10 to 12,000 square foot facilities where majority of the space looks like a large living room with sofas, chairs, tables, desks in some areas where students can come and drop in for tutoring and to do their work. And we also have some classroom because we do a blended option. So the remainder of the space is classroom space. But I oversee 2 of those locations, and I have 2 phenomenal principals who work under me who basically run the show, and I just kind of provide guidance and oversight.
Wow, okay, so now are most of your students, taking the courses in a very, online format where they're maybe at home going through the program? I know that you mentioned cyber cafes, but those are kind of optional for them?
Yes. So we have 375 full-time online students in 7. No, that's not right. Let me go back. We just added some students. We had 375 full-time online students in 9th through 12th grade. We have 250 part-time 9th through 12th grade students. Middle school, we have about 275 online students, 7 and 8th grade. Our 3rd through 6th grade is very small. We have about 50 students. For the students in 7th through 12th grade, we offer them full online curriculum where they have the option to stay home 5 days a week working on their curriculum. However, 4 days a week, we do have our cyber cafes open where they can come in, use our Chromebooks, use our internet, meet with a teacher, or do science labs, art labs for their visual and performing art. Or we give them the option to come in for some of those classes being blended, so it's part-time in the classroom and part-time online. So we do offer both for our students.
Oh, now, thankfully, I've had the opportunity to talk to you already about this, and I think the Cyber Cafe is what really stood out to me. Do you know of a lot of online learning programs that, offer that kind of option? That's new to me.
There's different options around in Southern California. I work really closely with the other leaders in our county, and I would say that this idea is taking off. I am a huge cheerleader for cyber cafes and learning center spaces for students throughout California. So we are seeing it kind of grow in California. I'm not as familiar with these options outside of California, but I do know that the idea came, our charter schools are independent study, which is a way of educating in California. And a huge part of who we are and what we do is provide flexible options, and we partner with parents and students. And this was a way to provide students and families a place to receive support and instruction, and just to feel comfortable and have a place to kind of call home. It's really hard when you're doing full online to feel like you belong, and this gives opportunity.
Awesome. It's interesting now. Talk to me a little bit about your backstory. Now, did you always want to be the director of online learning programs when you were growing up, or how did that come about?
That's a funny question. I was talking to somebody this last week and saying I have no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. Both of my parents were educators for 40 years, and I started with that whole I'm not going to be an educator, I'm not going to be an educator, kicking and screaming. My brother did the same thing. He is a coach, not an educator, but he coaches. So I guess it's in our blood. No, I actually am one of those people who hated high school. I hated the social aspect of high school. I hated everything about it. And I begged my mom to let me graduate early. We didn't have charter schools and flexibility at the time like we do now. And so I took extra courses and graduated early, and I went to a traditional college for a bachelor's degree, where I went and sat in a seat and did my units. After graduating with my bachelor's, I knew I wanted to get my credential and do some other education, and I went to National University for my single subject credential, and that was an online program. And after that, I pursued a couple more master's degrees, but those were in the online format as well. And I realized that I really enjoyed learning this way. I am not a big fan of sitting in a classroom, and I'm not really good at paying attention in meetings. My boss would agree with that. And I found that in online learning, I could give it the time I needed when I had the time. And so I did the same thing when I worked on my doctorate. I chose a program that would be fully online because of my schedule. And I realized along the way with these online educational options for myself that we needed to provide this flexibility and learning opportunities for our students. And it worked really well at the classical academies because we're already an independent study program. And we were giving our students, back in the day, paper packets of information to take home and learn at their own pace. But with online learning, we could provide much more support and accountability and richer content. And so about 4 years ago, I approached my boss and said, I really think we need to develop an online program. And he agreed. And he, at the time, that show was on HGTV, The Big White Box. And he said, this is your big white box. I want you to spend the year researching, looking into what's out there, visiting other programs, and then I want you to put together this program. And he pretty much gave me free rein. And I spent the year visiting other schools, reading articles, attending conferences, looking at 25 different learning management systems. 20 or 30 different curriculum vendors, hiring staff and training, and we opened our doors 3 years ago with 50 students. Thought that that was a great number. Within a month, we had 100. By the end of the school year, we had 150, and it just hasn't stopped. We just keep growing, which I think speaks to the need for flexible options for students and families.
Well, it's, there's a lot of things that you said that I'd like to talk more about as we kind of move forward. But one thing I just want to point out, and I think our audience has already, picked up on this, but it's so neat to see people who are passionate about education, and specifically the ways that they feel benefited from education, and moving themselves into a position to provide that for students. That's a very encouraging story. I have one more thing I want to talk to you about on this particular point, but we do have a question from Catherine, and I knew that some people would be asking questions about this. With your cyber cafe, what would be the typical participation in that? Like, how many people can be there? How many kids usually show up for that experience?
So we have 2 cyber cafes. We have one. So let me back up. We have one of our charters is a 9 through 12 high school charter, and we have 3 programs that we run through that charter. We have what is called Studio, which looks like a traditional high school. The students are on campus 4 days a week in traditional classrooms, and Mondays is an optional day they can come in for tutoring. That program has 800 students. 275 of those students are part-time online students. So that means they take 1 or 2 online classes a year through our cyber cafes. We have another program called 5-Day Independent Study, and these students are homeschooled 5 days a week. And how that is different from online is that they are using textbooks, and their parent is very involved in the teaching and in selecting the curriculum, and they work with a credentialed teacher to make that happen. Then we have our online program, and we have the 375 full-time online students. So in our cyber cafe in Escondido, which is located right across the street from our Studio campus, which serves the 800 students, that cyber cafe has about 150 students a day on site. We open at 7:20 in the morning and we close at 6 p.m. And I would say between 9 and 4, it is pretty slammed. We are actually moving to a larger location this summer because of the demand for space for the students. A lot of our students, Escondido is a poorer area of San Diego County, and we have many students who come in to use our computers and our internet access. We also serve a population of students who chose us because they were bullied or have special education needs or health concerns, and our cyber cafes provide them with a place where they can come. Even though there's 150 students, there are still quiet spaces where they can learn. There's access to teachers, access to peers so that they're not alone. They do work on their assignments together. We have tech support if they're using their own equipment, and they can come in and receive that. We have special education services provided to them here. So the Escondido Cyber Cafe probably has about 150 on average Tuesday through Friday. Our Oceanside Cyber Cafe probably has about 100 students on average in the high school, and then we have middle school on that site as well, and there are about 80 high schoolers. So upstairs is middle school, downstairs is high school, and we are expanding that location as well because we see that there's going to be a growing need in that location as well. So the layout of—
and that's interesting too. Because, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead and explain the layout.
Well, the layout, I designed the cyber cafes for both of them, and they are very large spaces that have direct line of sight throughout the space. So there are no walls, there are no places where students can hide. Every single classroom office has a large window. There is no privacy in any room other than the restroom. There are staff desks in the middle of the space where we have what are called academic coaches. Those are like guidance counselors and support. They sit in the middle of the space and have the ability to monitor all activity. The teachers and tutors that are in the space are sitting with the students at the tables and on the couches and chairs. So there's a lot of adult interaction, and adults are interspersed throughout the space. So there really is, it's very different from a classroom where you have students all sitting in rows. It really is a really large living room. I'm looking out right now and I have like students sitting on couches. We're doing a special presentation today. They're usually not here. But we have teachers sitting at conference tables. We have a dining room table that somebody donated that students are sitting at. So it's really just an eclectic, kind of fun, bright, transparent space.
Wow. Now, a couple of questions. Actually, Martin had some follow-up questions I'm going to go ahead and ask for him. So you mentioned that the students, when they are there in the area, they're working with other students, collaborating, but they're also working with teachers as well. How many teachers would you say are kind of manning that type of area?
I always have 2 math teachers on site, no matter what, because math is the most requested subject for tutoring. I always have a receptionist, so somebody manning the phone, and a lab supervisor. The rest of the time, it kind of fluctuates based on the time of the day, and we have monitored attendance, and we staff based on when the students are going to be here. So my teachers don't necessarily teach a regular, 7:30 to 3:30 teaching job. Some are here at 7 a.m. and leave at 2. Some are here at 10 and leave at 6 p.m. So they kind of have different schedules. But there's typically about 6 adults in the cyber cafe at a time as a minimum. We have 40 staff members, 25 of those are part-time. So, and many of them are non-credentialed college students that are tutoring, and they seem to relate really well to our high school students, and the high school students appreciate working with them. But we have about 15 to 20 full-time credentialed teachers. All of our teachers have multiple credentials. So they're single subject credentialed in California, but they might have a math credential and a history credential, or a biology credential and an English credential. So that was one of the things that makes it a lot more cost-effective and powerful for our students.
Wow, that's so great. The thing that I kept on thinking about too, Dr. Clifton, as you were explaining the scenario, is that even if some districts aren't maybe even ready to move forward with a full online learning program, just seeing that kind of layout of students collaborating together, teachers overseeing it, I think that's something that's very relatable. And hopefully as we get further into this webinar, we can talk a little bit about how Schoology can help support that. So for those of you who are waiting to see that, hold on, we're going to get there. So my last question for you on this one is, like, what does your typical day look like? So when Dr. Clifton goes into work, what are the things that kind of find its way on your plate?
That's a funny question. A typical day in the life. I have an office in my Oceanside Cyber Cafe, but I am not there very often. I am currently in my Escondido Cyber Cafe. I spent part of my morning at our studio campus, and I will spend part of my afternoon on one of our other campuses meeting with their online staff. My day, I said before that I have phenomenal principals working under me. I try to take care of the business aspect of things that kind of gets in the way of meeting student, parent, and teacher needs. So I deal with the budget, I would deal with facilities issues, I deal with looking, checking out vendors, meeting with vendors, you know, the kind of the stuff that's kind of boring. I attend about 30, 40 meetings a week on various topics and areas because I do have multiple hats I wear. But when I'm on a cyber cafe, one of my favorite things to do is to just sit in the middle of the cyber cafe and answer my email with the kids around, and they'll come up to me and they'll ask me if I can help them and tutor in some area. And I always say, if it's math, I am not the one to help you. You need to go find another teacher. But I do have my history and English credentials, so I'm more than happy to help you there. But I also do sub a lot. I have a music credential as well, so I sub a lot for our music classes because I think that's fun. I also require all of my staff, all of my principals to teach a class. So I teach a course as well. I teach college and career planning and development. So part of my day is going through my class and grading and answering questions, posting a discussion question in Schoology for the students to answer, and developing the curriculum for that as well. And I think by continuing to be a teacher and stay in that role, I have an idea of the additional training my staff needs. I have an idea of what the students need. When a teacher comes to me and says, I'm seeing this as an issue, I can usually agree or disagree based on being in the program and understanding what's happening, where I think a lot of times administrators tend to lose sight of what's really happening because they're in those meetings all week and not working directly with the students. So I meet with my principals every 2 weeks. And if I'm not meeting with them directly, I check in with both of them. The two that I directly oversee, I check in with both of them daily. And I check in with the others that I oversee at least every 2 weeks, phone or text, if not face-to-face. So my typical day is not so typical. I tend to work from my computer, and everything is online and in the cloud, which I love.
Yeah. Now, you know, for one question I did forget to ask. Now, who do you kind of report to? Who oversees your position?
Our executive director of our charter school. So Cameron Curry is our executive director, and I report to him.
Okay. Before I move on, Scott Smith, who is with Schoology, and Scott, were there any other questions I might have missed that came up?
No, Adam, you addressed them all, but if anybody has questions or wants to actually verbalize and talk to the group, please ask your question in the question box and raise your hand in the GoToWebinar meeting, and I'll be sure to address those if I can and bring them up to the group if not.
Great. Thanks, Scott. So, okay, we've kind of finished our first portion of our formula with knowing a little bit about Dr. Clifton. The next, I want to kind of go into the Schoology, and we're going to take, just as we kind of asked Dr. Clifton those kind of questions, I want to go through Schoology in that same way. So we're going to start off with the role. What part does Schoology really play in the classical academies there? So
I stated earlier that when I had the chance to look at learning management systems 4 years ago, I came across Schoology. It was one of the 25 I looked at. And to be honest, Canvas and Schoology were the top two for different reasons, which I'll get into in a little bit. But we ended up going with Schoology because we are a K-12 organization, and it had more of a K-12 feel. And we wanted something, even though I was looking at it at the time just for our online program, I knew that what we were currently using to share information with parents in our entire organization was not going to work and needed to be changed and updated to be more in the 21st century. We were using kind of a wiki program to deliver content, and it just isn't interactive. So I looked at the 25 different learning management systems and loved Schoology for its ease of use and the flexibility that it had and the responsiveness of the team. I'm really big on customer service. If my parents expect my emails to be returned in less than 24 hours, and in order for me to do that, the team that I work with at Schoology needs to do the same thing, and in the other systems I use, and I found that Schoology met that need. So the role it plays in the different parts of our organization is a little different. In our online program, Schoology started mostly as a communication tool. We also use Edgenuity, which is a curriculum, a vendor that we use for curriculum, and when we first started. And Schoology was the way that we could email parents easily, share information quickly. The app was a great way to see things on the fly. And we needed to develop a few courses on our own, and Schoology gave us that, the platform to develop these courses. So some of our first courses were PE, which pretty basic. We needed to post a log somewhere. We needed to post about 5 assignments to be completed in a quarter. And it was just really easy and simple. And the calendar feature was something that our parents appreciated. And then as our online program grew, we knew we wanted to develop our own courses. That was always our end goal, to develop all our own online courses. And we got into Schoology more, and we realized we could use the gradebook was helpful, the ability to use turnitin.com and Big Blue Button, and we use BrainPop and some other tools. Being able to integrate those into the courses, Khan Academy, was really important to us. We're also a Google school, and with Google integrating into Schoology as well, that made it easy for our students to access all their Google Docs and use those. One of the things that we didn't realize at the time would be super powerful were the rubrics that you can create in Schoology. And as we have been transitioning with the rest of, well, most of the United States into Common Core, we've had to develop new rubrics, new ways of grading and assessing, and those rubrics, being able to build them into our courses and having kind of a template rubric and then adapt them for different courses has been very important. For our online program, we use it now, again, mainly for communication, and for some courses have been developed in there. Through our other programs, our middle school, all of their curriculum is delivered through Schoology, and their teachers, they meet in the classroom 2 to 3 days a week, and their teachers use Schoology to disseminate homework, to show PowerPoints, to provide lecture notes. We all use discussion questions pretty frequently. In our K through 6 program, we are just rolling this out next year. We've been piloting it this year. But because we're an independent study program, which means that part of the time our parents homeschool their students, we have spent a lot more time being very intentional about how we use Schoology and develop the courses. And we've worked really closely with our Schoology team and some of the trainers to figure out exactly how to set up a course so that the parents, it's the easiest for parents to access for some of our population, and at other grade levels, it's easier for students to access. And for other programs, it's mostly teacher-driven. So what we really love is the flexibility in Schoology to use the different tools and the ways of setting up the courses. Are you going to use folders, or are we using pages? Is it mostly assignment-based? But what it all gets down to is that calendar is there, and it's color-coded, and a parent can see everything that all of their kids K through 12 are doing. And it's a communication tool across the board for everybody. So Schoology plays a very vital role in the sense that because we're independent study, it is where everything that we share with our families, all of the curriculum is housed there. And we're actually moving toward putting all of our professional development into Schoology, our new staff orientations. We're very big on culture, and we have a whole culture course that new staff take, and that's being developed in Schoology. Our finance department is developing a course on how to use all of our forms and how to read our pay stubs. I think we all need that one. So all of this is being developed in Schoology. So it's being used K through 12 for students, teachers, parents, and staff.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I know that our webinar is focused on online learning programs. Maybe I'm gonna have to just talk to you more about all the things that you're doing outside of that. That sounds amazing. Ray, we just need to do a follow-up webinar, with Lesley Clifton Part 2. One of the questions that was being asked by Roger is you mentioned Edgenuity and that you still have some of the curriculum content on Edgenuity. Can you talk about that process and kind of how Schoology and Edgenuity? I know that you mentioned Schoology was kind of being used as the communication aspect, and Edgenuity was more of the content. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we started that way. When we first started, I made the decision to focus on training teachers, working with students, and using a pre-built curriculum rather than spend the time developing our own. Now that we are 3 years in, we are developing our own curriculum, but we made that decision at the beginning to use Edgenuity because it really works with our population. We have quite a large special ed population, and Edgenuity provided a lot of flexibility in the content. It provided us flexibility in pacing. It uses speech or text-to-speech. It's very visual, which worked with our students. We still have some courses. We're slowly developing our courses in Schoology. We started with our science courses, and all of our content is A through G approved and needs to remain A through G in California, college prep approved. So getting an online course approved in California as college prep is difficult. It's not an easy process. It's quite tedious. So we are being very careful about how we roll this out and developing the courses in line with our other high school programs so that everything is across the board, has the same curriculum map, same content being taught at the same time. So we could have integrated Edgenuity into Schoology. However, Edgenuity would have lost some of its flexibility and capabilities that we enjoy. It has a great progress report and target system. If there's one thing I would love for Schoology to have, it would be to kind of have a checklist for students to be able to see where they're at within their course really easily in a colorful bar like Edgenuity. And we didn't want to lose that, which we would have lost had we integrated it into Schoology. So we've made the decision right now to not integrate the two. There are other schools in our area that I have worked with who have integrated the two, and they're very happy that way. But I firmly believe that you need to cross one bridge at a time, and we're focusing on building strong content and using already pre-approved, pre-developed content in our other areas as we slowly build others.
Yeah, and something I'll add to what you just said, Dr. Clifton, because we were talking about this before, is, when it comes to creating content, I know Edgenuity offers the ability for users to add in content, right? It can be part of a course module. But I know in our conversations, what you're wanting to see happen more and more is that interactive element within the course. That it's not just, here's this content to read, here's a video to watch, here's a test to take, but more of, there's a discussion to be had. There's a more robust submission of work that needs to be submitted. That's all part of the communication aspect of a course. I think that was something that really stood out to me in our previous conversation, that really leading you this way.
Exactly, and I think having the portfolio has been important, having students post work in their portfolio. And one of my favorite course features that I don't think people use enough is the media button. We have our students in our art classes and all of our classes upload media, and they have to discuss what other students are posting. So they're discussing other pieces of art. They're discussing videos they've made. They're discussing current events that somebody's posted in the media page. And that having that authentic discussion around authentic work is very important to us. Exactly.
Right. The ability to quickly capture with an iPhone or a smart, a tablet, and be able to post it right into Schoology makes it really slick.
Yes.
I have actually, there was a question that came up, and I'm not going to put you on the spot with this one, Dr. Clifton. I hopefully will be able to answer this one. Martin had a question about rubrics, because you mentioned, Dr. Clifton, that you guys are using rubrics. And one of his kind of concerns is that in most traditional learning management systems, when you, let's say it's a essay question, or let's say it's an assignment submission, or even a discussion forum, which some platforms don't even allow you to grade, he's concerned that, okay, well, if there's a rubric associated with this submission or this assignment or whatever it is, that he might have multiple standards associated with it. So he might have 4 different standards that are associated with this one item, and he's concerned that if I'm using a rubric, if I give them a grade, would they just get the same grade for all those different things? And one thing that you need to know about the rubrics within Schoology is that it allows you to create, first off, your own criteria. So if you have your own criteria, you can put those into a rubric, but you also have the ability to tie standards into them, whether they're Common Core or whatever your state holds to. And then each standard becomes an individual item to select. So if I'm grading a particular submission, I could give someone, let's say out of 4, I could be whatever scale I want. I could give them a 2 on one standard, but then I could give them a 4 on a third. I have the ability within that assignment to grade based upon standards, and it doesn't have just a generic grade. Lesley, have you seen that happen with you guys, or have you used that functionality within Schoology?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why we love the rubrics so much, because the rubrics can be as rich or as simple as you need or want for that assignment. And as our curriculum team, we've developed basic templates for the rubrics with the basic information that needs to be addressed for specific topics. So like for writing, it might have certain things it needs, but in the course development and course creation process, which is why we're being so intentional and slow about this, we're developing those rubrics to be very rich and standards driven, because we use the mastery-based system in Schoology as well, where it shows which standards students have mastered and where they're at in meeting the standards. So the more that we can tie standards to assignments and rubrics and discussions and everything we do, the more powerful that mastery tool becomes.
Exactly. Yeah, so and for those of you not familiar with Schoology, Mastery, what she's referring to is just a tab within any course that a teacher has the ability to go into and can see how students are progressing towards the objectives of that class. And as she mentioned as well, assignments, discussions, and tests all feed into that particular mastery and provide a very standard-specific result on how students are progressing. And it's funny too, this is obviously a live presentation. Something I'll mention to Dr. Clifton, maybe we can spend time talking about later, is that within Schoology, there's actually a way to do completion rules, so that at the very high level within a course, you can do student progress to be able to see how students are going through things. So it's a pretty neat thing to be able to offer, and that's something that maybe you and I can talk more about, Dr. Clifton. I know it doesn't give you quite as nice kind of a dashboard as Edgenuity, but it's pretty powerful.
Yes.
And Catherine also, it looks like Catherine sent out a link talking more about that particular question. So if you wanted to check that out, make sure you check it out. Not now, though. We're having some important conversation here, so focus. Wow. Okay, so you offered a lot of things with that one. One thing, though, that I want to talk about, do you kind of own this particular project, like Schoology's implementation in your district? Are you kind of overseeing that, or you kind of work alongside?
I oversee it, but we have a curriculum development team, K through 8, and under that K through 8, we have curriculum writers for different subjects. For math, there's a curriculum writer, ELA, history, science. And then when you get into high school, we have more subject area experts who are working on curriculum development. But work with 2 technology integration specialists. And their job is they understand Schoology probably more than I do because they're in it every day, developing curriculum and training. But they work directly with our teachers and our students and our staff and our parents in training them on how to use Schoology. And these 2 ladies have developed trainings. We use the Schoology professional development. We use it a lot. In fact, we require our teachers to do a certain number of Schoology trainings a year through Schoology. But we also, because we have so many quirky little programs, we've developed our own training with these ladies in Schoology. And we meet frequently, and they'll say something like, oh, we could do this, or we could use this in Google, and we can set this up. And so we're constantly throwing ideas back and forth. We always say that we're in beta mode, so we'll be doing something one day, and, oh, that beta didn't work, it's time to switch, and we'll do something different. So, no, I oversee, but I have a phenomenal team who actually is making sure this stuff gets done every day.
Awesome. It's something, too, that's really powerful is where you have someone who kind of is overseeing the Schoology implementation, no matter what you're doing, whether it's an online learning program or you're doing high school implementation or even, the elementary level, really pulling in the person who's kind of in charge of the technology with the curriculum side of things. I think that's one of the biggest things I see go wrong as I'm going to help various institutions, is that there's a disconnect there. So it's really powerful to hear that as an example of you provide what you're wanting, best experience for students.
And I think it's very important, and this is something I harp on, is that I am the vision keeper. That's kind of how I see my role, and I'm constantly remembering that we have to make sure it works for parents, students, and teachers. And then the team will come to me with an idea, and I'll say, no, that's too hard for a teacher. Okay, let's do it this way. Okay, but that doesn't work for students. So I think it's important to have somebody who kind of can see it from all the perspectives.
I agree. Okay, well, let me go to the next one, because your first answer, I think, nailed all of these questions. So well done. Let me go to the next slide. And these are really where, okay, so we've heard about Dr. Clifton, who she is. We've heard a little bit about Schoology and what's happening with it in the district. Hopefully all those are going to equal some takeaways for you, but I also want to give Dr. Clifton a chance to share some takeaways, some insights. And the first question, we can kind of do this like a lightning round if you want. What would be like 2 successes that you've really seen with Schoology with your online learning program?
I would say the first is students taking a lot more ownership of their learning. With an online program, they have to have some sort of motivation, self-motivation, and they are able to see their peers responding to their work. Their teachers are able to quickly grade and give feedback on their assignments. And I'm seeing students take a lot more ownership of what they're producing, what they're submitting. When it's a discussion post and everybody can see it, you tend to take a little more time and care into what you post. And I think the second would be teachers. They are so excited to get into Schoology and develop a course and to share with each other what they've learned and to say, I figured out how to, some of the simple things in Schoology that I take for granted sometimes. I figured out how to post a discussion question and not allow students to see other responses until they post. Or I figured out how to assign specific assignments to a small group of students rather than the assignment I assigned overall. And seeing them just get in there and have fun and say, oh, I found this great resource, and am I able to embed it into Schoology? Am I able to do this? Or I found this video, but I don't really like it. Can I create my own and post it in Schoology? Absolutely. So I think the two successes would be the students and the teachers are both taking ownership over what they're doing and wanting to make it better and wanting to make it more interactive and wanting to put forth their best effort.
And the interesting thing, I totally, all the districts that I work with, those two things always seem to come up. And it's something that's oftentimes overlooked during a selection process, really, about how is our end users going to really receive the platform. But at the end of the day, that's really what we're going for, right? We want the students to have a great experience. We want teachers to have a great experience. And time again, when you stack Schoology compared to, again, I'm biased, when you stack Schoology compared to all the other platforms, we just always come out on top. So that's great to hear. Especially, I was personally, in the past, I was actually a user of some of the old, more traditional learning management systems, and that's what first drew me to Schoology. I saw the powerful nature of teachers taking part in actually a blended learning type models in their classrooms, and the excitement that grew from that. So that's great. Okay, well, last one on this particular is, what would be one suggestion that you have? Like, for instance, we have, 30% of our audience is out there asking a question of, I'm starting to evaluate my options with online learning programs. I've maybe seen Edgenuity, I've seen other learning management systems. Would you have a suggestion for them, or maybe just a suggestion in general if you don't have something that's specific?
Yeah. We are currently rolling out Schoology to the remainder of our students and our grade levels and teachers, and it kind of got away from me, and I admit that. I think being very careful and intentional about developing your timeline for rolling out any new tool or system is very important. We had a 3-year timeline, and our director wanted to move it up, and I don't think that I had the time to do that. And if I looked back now, I probably would have fought to say no, keep our 3-year timeline. But really, before you even introduce the new system, sharing why you need something different, what's working about the current system, what could be improved. And when I've been able to say, this is what isn't working with our current system and this is how Schoology can fix it, people have jumped on board. And I just wish I'd had more time to do that before, to get everybody on board right away instead of having those few that I'm still trying to bring up to speed. But I really think being very careful about timelines, making sure you have all stakeholder input, like you said before, making sure the tech team is completely invested in the integration of a learning management system into what you're doing, because that impacts your student information system, and it impacts the way you communicate currently with families. And we've had to look at all of our tools and resources and try to see, is this one we want to use? It doesn't currently integrate into Schoology. Maybe we look at this one that does currently integrate into Schoology. And it has been a very time-consuming but beneficial process. So my one suggestion would definitely be to take it slow, be very methodical, be very inclusive in all of the groups and people that are talked to as you develop an implementation process.
Yeah, that's great. I think setting up a timeline just helps any kind of implementation go smoother. And one thing I would add to your suggestion is, within your timeline, so as you guys are thinking through your own timeline, is be prepared for Schoology to move faster than you thought it would. Time and time again, we've seen teachers want to be a part of it. So it's more like, districts are almost having this feeling of trying to keep people out just because there's so many people wanting in. Keep that in mind. The more exposure Schoology gets, the more you're going to see it kind of blossom. That's great, Lesley, or Dr. Clifton. Really appreciate it. We do have some Q&A time here at the end, and I want to go back to a question that was asked by Brian that I thought was a good one, and I wanted to maybe ask it to you. He says, I'm curious to know more about the effectiveness of the online learning model that you oversee. How do the achievement results compare with other models, like a regular brick and mortar classroom? And if possible, if you have anything like organizational achievement results, she was interested to see if you had any of those.
Yeah. So in California, we just did our first statewide assessment last year with results. So we don't really have any, and unfortunately, there's only 11th grade is tested at the high school level. So the results we have are not great because there's nothing to base them on when it comes to statewide assessments. If we look at our own internal comparisons between what our online students are doing versus our students in our more traditional program, they are very close. Our students in our online program who are taking AP courses are still passing at the same levels of students who are taking them in our traditional classroom program, which for our school is really high. We have an 84% AP passing rate, and we have about 40% of our students taking more than one AP class. We have students who, we have a very strong, one of the first things we developed in Schoology were our, we don't call them remedial courses, we call them foundation courses in English and math, but we have very strong foundation courses in reading and math, and we have seen students come in at 5th grade level, and within 1 year they're at a 7th grade level, and within the 2nd year they're at grade level. So it's that working at your own pace and on the content that you need to work on. We've seen that be very successful. We have a 99.8% graduation rate from our online program. Every student who has wanted to go to college and has been accepted and has gone to college. Many of our students go to a junior college or a community college straight out of high school just for financial reasons. But we have students who are currently in this program and are working full-time, who are going they're taking concurrent enrollment courses at a community college. They're taking the California High School Proficiency Exam. Many of our students are in this program until they can pass that and then graduate because they have health concerns. So we don't have a traditional population where it's easy to compare, but we have, one of the things we do is that our students have to get 80% on an assignment or on a quiz or a test before they can move on. So we're mastery based. So we have a very low DF rate. The majority of our students have a B average or above. We have also seen that our students are scoring as well on the PSAT and SAT as their traditional counterparts in our local district in Escondido. So I'm looking forward to having more statewide data to compare in the future, but I really, unfortunately, think it's probably going to be 3 to 5 years before we have anything really significant so that we can see trends, because unfortunately our online program started 3 years ago, right when we lost our statewide testing and transitioned. So so hopefully in a couple of years we'll have something more significant to share.
Wow. Well, I just wanted to, our time is, we're out of time actually. I just wanted to say on behalf of, we've got a lot of comments coming in, Dr. Clifton, about just what a great job you've done today. Really well done. Thank you for the conversation. And also thank you for what you're doing in education. You're making a difference in students' lives, and we're super thankful for that. So thank you for being a part of today.
Thank you.
Clifton.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate sharing.
Yeah. And one of the last things I do want to cover for everyone, something that we were hoping to be able to do, we have a brief demo that we can actually go through a little bit more about Schoology for those of you who kind of just want to see what it looks like. So if you'd like to stick around for another 5 minutes or so, you can. We encourage you to do that. If not, if you have to go, really keep Schoology Exchange in mind. We want to continue bringing the message of great user stories to you. And if you see another email come your way talking about Schoology Exchange, please join us. We want you to be a part of it. So at this time, I will go ahead. I want to open up another tool that we're going to be using to help go through these things. So I'm going to pause. Actually, I'll just open this up real quick. Now, when it comes to Schoology, Schoology is a learning management system, and I love Dr. Clifton's examples of all the ways that a learning management system can affect that classroom, whether it's in specifically in an online learning program or in an intermediate level school or even at the K-6 level. There's some great possibilities for users to be able to do that. And just to give you a quick lowdown of what it looks like, I'm going to go to, we have a couple of user stories here. I'm going to start off with Mr. Conrad. I just want to go from Mr. Conrad's perspective just so you can see what Schoology looks like. Mr. Conrad, whenever he logs into Schoology, this is what he's going to see. He's going to see a 3-column layout where in the middle he has all of his recent activities. So whether he's part of a course, maybe it's a PD course that Lesley was talking about or Dr. Clifton was talking about, maybe it's a course that he's actually teaching, maybe it's a group that he's a part of, let's say a particular curriculum group. You can see all that recent activity happening right here. So for instance, he has a note from the math coordinator about an upcoming meeting that's happening, and one from the algebra leader who has a new Unit 3 check for understanding to check out. And then of course you can see a course that he's actually made within his course. If I go into courses, I can see all the courses that Mr. Conrad's a part of. He's part of an algebra course, which I'm going to go to in a second. He's also part of Washington Generals, which is the high school level course that his principal oversees. And underneath that, a PD course on flipping the classroom, which he took part in over the summer. These are great ways for him not only to deliver content, but also to receive that content in instruction. I'm going to click on algebra just so you can see what this algebra course looks like. So here's Mr. Conrad's algebra course. This is what we call the course page. It has a 3-column layout, just as we saw on the home page. It has a way for him to have some ownership, as Lesley was mentioning, an image that says, hey, this is my course. In the middle is the content for his particular course that shows the things that he wants his students to be able to see. For instance, his first particular classroom talks about the flipped classroom, well, what that is. And on the right-hand side, we have his reminders and upcoming calendar events, things that are associated specifically with this course that he needs to have quick access to. To start off, though, I want to click on this folder down here, and you can see that within his algebra lessons folder, he has his whole course. So as Dr. Clifton was mentioning, these courses are being now built out using Schoology. These courses can be robust. It can contain a lot of different content that you want to deliver to students. Again, whether it's an online program or face-to-face, all that content can be kept in one place. But for students, it's easy for them to be able to access content at a calendar. So they can simply go to the calendar and they can see that for today, let's say it's Monday the 18th, when they go to lesson 5, they can actually go directly to that item that they're going over that day. This particular example is the students are having a flipped lesson where they're watching a video and it's associated with a test. So they're actually having to answer questions as they're watching the video. a discussion forum where they can ask questions, an in-class assignment where they're actually going to make a submission that's using a rubric to grade, and then finally another discussion that's set up just for Mr. Conrad in a smaller group of students right within that course. And if we had more time, there's a lot more stories that we could share with you, whether it's Miss Darnell in her second grade class or Mrs. Smith in her desire to personalize her instruction. There's a lot of ways that Schoology can be used to meet your needs. And hopefully we can have a time to meet with you individually and talk more about it. So if you want to, if you even email Scott Smith, Scott@Schoology.com. He can maybe even arrange something for us to have a more intimate conversation. So for today, I do want to go ahead and close us down. I really appreciate your time being here with Schoology Exchange, and hopefully you learned something. I know I did, and I'm even excited to maybe have a part 2 of this conversation with Dr. Clifton. Hope all of you have a great day. Enjoy your week. Make a difference for education. We have an important task that's been given to us, and let's make the most of it. So thank you so much for your time.